All right, we did all that hard work, and now the fun part. We are going to stretch fence wire. To get started here, I'm going to show you what you're going to need. I'm typically not your kind of guy that's going to say safety, 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 and give you a big safety meeting and safety speech before we get started. But this is a situation. Safety glasses, you're going to want to have safety glasses. There's going to be little pokey wires sticking out at random places, and you're going to be getting your head down in it, and there is a high potential of a piece of wire poking you in the eye. So I recommend you make sure you get safety glasses. It's like I said, it's one of those unique situations where even as a homeowner or do-it-yourselfer, you're going to want to have it. This is a little piece of decking board. You could use some 3/4 inch plywood or anything else. It's probably a little shorter than I want it, but that's okay. I'm going to make it work. This is just a scrap piece of wood I picked up. What this is for is this is going to set on the ground underneath my fence stretcher and just give me something to kind of slide on. If you don't, that's okay, but what'll happen is this will try to dig into the ground for you and just make your job a little bit tougher. This is a fence stretcher. You're going to see how I use it in a minute. This is a metal wedge. It's got these wedges. It doesn't cost that much more than you'll see the homemade ones or the cheaper ones that are like two pieces of 2x4 bolted together. I've seen videos where those cause people nothing but problems. It's really not worth it. You might as well just go ahead and get the right thing from the start. When you're done, put it online and sell it if you don't want it anymore. Come-alongs, you're going to need 2 of them. One for the top of the fence and one to stretch the bottom of the fence. These are going to hook onto these little rings here you see on the fence stretcher itself. So I got 2 come-alongs. This one's kind of optional. I found this thing so handy. This is a Milwaukee M18 fence stapler. You only need a little battery for this thing. I don't even know what I had this battery for. None of my tools, I get about 2 trigger pulls on any of my tools and this battery would be dead. But this is just a little Milwaukee 2.0 battery. It must have came with something I bought, because I definitely never went and bought this thing. But I'll tell you, this fencing stapler uses like no battery power. I don't know how, I don't know the making of the workings inside here and how this thing works, but it does not use battery power. I think the battery's only to power the little LED light that's down here on this thing. You'll be surprised how many staples you can put in with just one little 2.0 battery. And then the smaller the battery, the lighter this thing is, because it's not light, but you know, it's manageable. I've got myself a box of staples. These are 1 3/4 barb staples, 960 of them in one of these boxes. One of these boxes is about $100. This fencing stapler, if you buy it new, I think they run like $800. They're pricey. It's nice to have though, okay? I didn't pay $800 for this one. I got this on Amazon. It was listed used or open box, return, whatever they call it. And I got this for $500, which I would have paid. Knowing what I know now after using this thing, I put in 2 miles of fence here. And knowing what I know now after using this thing, it would have been worth every penny, $800. But once I'm done with my fence, I'm done fencing. So I'm not really going to need this thing anymore. It's going to be one of those things that just sits on my shelf forever. So, that's kind of hard to swallow. But my plan is, we got a lot of people with fences around here. Somebody's going to buy this thing, so I'm just going to list it for sale. I'll get my $500 back out of it. Here's another thing you're going to want. And this is for wrapping the fence wire. It's really just a 5-inch pin, a 5-inch brace pin that they smashed flat on this one end, and then they punched a couple holes through it. These come 5 inches long. You can see mine's actually about 3 inches long, and that's because I took and cut the end of it off And that just makes this thing a whole lot easier to use. If you do leave it full length, it's going to be constantly getting in your way, and you're probably eventually going to just go and cut it. So I would cut this thing down from the start. Pliers, some people use lineman pliers. If you had a set of lineman pliers, I have a set, but if you use a set of lineman pliers, you can eliminate having two. You can have one tool to do both. I find that using these channel lock pliers with the 90 degree head on them makes wrapping the fence wire a whole lot easier than trying to use lineman pliers. So for me, what this does to make things easier makes up for having to carry an extra tool. And this is just a cutter for cutting your fence wire. And the All Essential coffee. So with that, I'm going to get this stuff moved down to where we're going to be working at, and we're going to get started pulling some fence. Oh, and I almost forgot one last thing. You're going to need a hammer, and this is just for driving in your wedges and getting them back out after you get them tight. I almost forgot that. I would have walked all the way down there and realized I forgot. That's too bad. A couple more little details. You know, want some kind of bucket or container that you can throw your little wire clippings off, because you're going to be clipping off little short pieces of wire here. I don't like leaving them laying on the ground because I don't want them getting stuck into the dog's feet. I don't want them getting stuck into my mower tires. And if you have grazing animals, they're going to be down there eating that grass, and you don't want them eating little pieces of wire. I also have this magnet. Any kind of magnet will work. This I just happen to have. I just use this to sweep over my area and make sure I get all those little pieces of wire picked up. You want two boards, or these are 2x4s, and they are cut to be just a little bit longer than my fence. You want a little bit longer, not a little bit shorter. You're going to see what I'm going to use these two for. And then, since I am on, normally when you're putting in a fence, you would just set your fence post and you'd roll your roll out. Roll your roll out, and then as you start to tension your fence, the fence will stand up against your post, and you can do everything that way. Where you can see a couple of my problems. I don't have room to roll it out because of the trees. So I have to actually attach my fence to the post first, and with the roll upright, I have to lift it and turn it, and lift it and turn it, and lift it and turn it all the way down that hill, just so I can get between the trees. And it's a pain. I've got an almost full roll of fence here. I ran this little bit here out of that 330-foot roll, so there's quite a bit on that roll still. It's still plenty heavy, even with that much off of it. It's plenty heavy. The lighter you can make it, the easier it is to lift and turn and lift and turn. It's a pain. It's the worst part of this whole thing. But what I've done here to make my life a little easier is I've measured from this post to where I'm going down there to that post. I measured that out. I give myself 2 extra feet on each side of the post, and that 2 extra feet is a bare minimum. If you've got extra fence and you can afford, maybe give yourself 3 extra feet. You could always cut the extra off. It's a nightmare or impossible to add back on. And when you get down on these 6-inch posts, when I wrap them, it consumes almost exactly 2 feet of wire, believe it or not, going around this 6-inch post. So what you don't want to have happen is when you go to wrap your post, you don't want to end up just an inch too short. It'll ruin your whole day, and you'll have that whole section of fence ruined. Again, ideally, you're not going to do this step, but when you're on really steep terrain, every little trick you can do to make your life easier is going to help. So again, what I've done is I've measured it out. I like to use this little wheel measure thing. You just hold the handle and run it along the ground, and the little wheel measures as you go. It's a lot easier for this situation. You could use a reel tape like this. You know, that's 100 foot. What I wouldn't do is use one of those laser measurers because it's probably hard to see. You'll see once I start putting the fence in here, but there's dips. This ground isn't perfectly straight and flat going down that hill. What a laser measuring device is going to do is it's going to give you a measurement as the crow flies. So it's going to give you a straight line measurement. You're going to come up way short because it's not going to account for any dips and everything in that hill. So I've taken and measured my distance that I need to go from this post to that post. I've given myself 2 extra feet on each end, and that's going to give me 87 feet. So I've gone ahead and rolled my fence out. There's my roll setting up there on the driveway. I've rolled my fence out. I'm gonna double check, measure twice, cut once. I'm gonna remeasure this. I'm gonna make sure I've got plenty extra fence, so I'm gonna actually give myself almost 3 extra feet on each end. So I'm 87 feet. That's gonna be 87 feet plus 6 feet. So I'm gonna measure that out, and then I'm gonna go down here and cut, and then I'll roll this back up and we'll get started with it. Okay, I've measured out. My exact distance I want is gonna be right here. So I'm just gonna cut these horizontal wires all the way on up. I'm actually gonna start on this end because this is gonna wanna roll up on me as I go. And that way I'm not trying to fight that. So safety glasses are on. There's one, cut that one, cut that one. That one. Cut these all the way down, get this out of my way. Don't step on this end because I don't want it to take off on me. It will. Okay, so it'll take off on you like that. And that's why you also wear the safety glasses. If that just flipped up unexpectedly, it would have hit me right in the eye. Okay, so got that cut. I'm gonna roll this back up. Okay, got that wire rolled back up. Hey, trust me, this is a whole lot easier to manage than that entire roll. And then, I mean, not only do you have to fight it and roll it standing up all the way down the hill through the trees, then once you're done down there, you got to carry it back up the hill. You know, what goes down must come up. So we got this rolled up. Now what I'm going to do is cut out these vertical wires, and this is going to give me my wire on the end of this roll to wrap around my post. So I know I need 2 feet of wire to make it around my post and have enough to wrap. So 2 feet actually comes out about 4 of these things. I'm going to take 5 of them out because I do have extra wire. I allowed for that. And again, I'm going to start cutting this on the part furthest away from me. That way when it flips up, it doesn't hit me in the face. So, now what we're going to do is just go right down here and cut 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And that's going to give me way more wire than I need, but that's okay. So 1, 2, and I cut them in the middle. You'll see why. 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And I'm just going to go down and cut the rest of these up. We'll get back to you. Okay, I got those all cut. You're just kind of flopping in there again. This is where you want the safety glass because these little wires will poke your eye out without even trying. Okay, now what you want to do is you can see where I cut my vertical wires. Now what you want to do is you're going to take all those little pieces off of here. And this is hinge joint fence. These are a little easier to take off than the knots. The end ones are easy. They'll just easily slip right off of there. Not a lot of tension holding those on. So I'll get all those off. And these are where it gets a little trickier. Where this hinge, I just never can get my phone to want to focus on what I want to focus on. I guess that's what happens when you're not a video guy. You kidding me? You gotta see how this is. It's all flopping around on me. Let's focus. There we go. Okay. Where am I? So you can see that's a hinge joint. It easily spins around here, but it's got a little bit too much grip to get it off, and I'll show you how we're gonna get that off. I'm gonna bend these two ends together. This is why you want to cut in the middle and leave yourself some extra. And I am not going to be able to do this on the phone, holding the phone, but I'm going to take my pliers and I'm going to hold this end right here, and then with my thumb I'm just going to bend this back, about a half a turn is all it takes, and that will loosen this wire's grip up on here, and you'll be able to just easily slide it right off the end. I'll show you after I get one off. But there's there's three. There's welded fence, but we're not even going to talk about that. Everybody says it's garbage, so I didn't use welded wire fence. But this is hinge joint. And these look, if you're just looking at it and you're thinking, oh, I got to cut every one of those little bends to get that off there. That's not how you do it. You'll do it like I just showed you, and these are real easy to get off, real easy. The other type, and I have some over here on my temporary fence. This is the no climb fence. But the other type is called knotted. And well, it'd be easier to see from the other side. Now these are a little tougher to get off because you don't just unwrap them. The way I found it's easiest to do it is I just clip here and clip here with my cutters, and then they fall off. But then you get all these little pieces everywhere. And they'll go shooting off also. So again, eye protection. These are a little tougher to get off. In a way, I kind of like these a little better. They hold the fence a lot stiffer. This hinge joint kind of hinges and flips around on you, and it's a little more effort to get it to stand up straight once you get it on your fence post. But I'm gonna again, I can't do this while I'm holding the phone. Here's the other thing, and this is where I learned how to do this. If you go to your fence manufacturer's website, they'll show you how to get their hinges or their knots off the end of the wire. This is OK brand fence. I hate this fence. I'll not recommend it. It's kind of cheesy. I like the red brand. It seems to be okay. Your experts will tell you want high tensile. And yeah, high tensile is a little bit different animal to install. So you're not going to use the knots and everything you see me doing in this video. If you have high tensile fence, make sure you know what you're using. High tensile fence, it's a little more rugged. It's probably a little bit harder to work with. It's definitely more cost, so it's going to be more expensive for you to buy it. But nobody around me, I was going to get high tensile fence, and nobody within 100 miles of here even carries it. So this is what everybody in my area uses, because this is what they sell, or this is why they sell it, because this is what everybody in my area buys. So this is what I'm going with. Everybody else around here is using it. They don't seem to be having any problems with it. So this is not high tensile fence though. So just make sure, like I said, make sure you know what type of fence wire you're using. If it is high tensile fence, you're gonna have to do things a little bit different than what I'm showing you here. This isn't a video on installing high tensile fence, so you're gonna be on your own there. But I'm gonna go ahead, I'm gonna get all these little pieces off my wire and then we'll come back. Okay, got all those off. And you can see I didn't have to cut, I didn't have to unwind the whole thing. You just wrap them off or twist them off, throw them in the bucket. I got them all off. So I've got way more extra wire here stripped back than I needed to. I kind of did that so I could show you on the video. It's a lot easier just to cut the extra off. You know, I cut back 5 of my vertical wires. I only really needed to cut 4 and I would have had just enough, or maybe even a little extra still. But I went ahead, I've got some extra, I allowed myself extra fence here, so I got these a little bit longer than I need to. Now, is this step absolutely necessary? I guess not absolutely necessary. It's going to look a lot cleaner than if you try to leave those wires on and wrap the post. The one thing you don't want to do, and this is the rookie mistake that people make, is pull your fence tight to here and just staple it. Even if you try to bend it around and put another staple in there, it's not going to hold. You got to wrap. You got to take the time to wrap. I got this extra wire here. You got to take the time to go ahead and go around your fence post and wrap it. See, yeah, it doesn't, you don't have to get them all perfect like that. If they're a little bit spaced apart, it's not going to matter. It's going to hold. You know, I put staples in just to make it easier to hold everything there while I wrap it. But I guess you really wouldn't need to even do that. I would, but you know, that's up to you. If you're pounding staples in by hand, every little less staple you have to hammer in by hand is probably going to be better for you. But this is the most important thing though. Do not pull your fence down here, cut it, and just put a staple on it. You gotta wrap the wire around the post and then twist it back around. And again, this is not high tensile wire. That's why I can get away with not having an actual knot down here. If you are using high tensile wire, you're going to have to actually knot this, because high tensile wire, it's like a spring steel. It'll want to go back to its original shape, so it will unwrap itself with just a little bit of tension pulling on there. It might not look like it's doing it while you're wrapping it, but as soon as something goes and puts a little bit of tension on that fence, it's gonna unravel itself. So with a high tensile wire, you got to put a knot. With this wire that's not high tensile, I don't need to do that. I can wrap it and it's gonna stay like that. Okay, I stood my roll. Zoom back. Stood my roll up here. Again, this is where you want to wear the safety goggles. You've got all these little wires and they just go where they want to go. They will get you in the eye, I guarantee it. But just to get myself started here, you'll see I stood my fence up next to my post and I went ahead and put staples. I guess this would be a little tougher to do if you're hammering these in with a hammer and trying to hold them by hand. I don't know. I don't have that problem. I'm not going to do it just to show you. But I'm going to get all these wires as straight with the post as I can get them. So I'm just kind of pushing them back onto my post. I want them. I want this end of the wire. I want, if anything, wrap more around the post than coming out this way. So that's what you see me doing here. I'm just kind of pushing it in, trying to get everything nice and straight. All right. And now here I'll start with my top wire and work my way down. That way, if you start at the bottom and work your way up, you're going to have all this extra wire poking you. So if you start at the top and work your way down, it gets it a little easier. Another thing here, we got a chigger right there. I hate chiggers. But anyhow, the other thing, so you'll notice I'm starting at the top of my hill and pulling down. And everything I could see from the actual experts, not the do-it-yourselfers, but the actual experts, they say start high and pull low. For the life of me, I can't figure out why it makes any difference, but I'm not going to question it because I can't come up with an answer. So I am going to start at the highest part of my hill and pull down to the lowest part. And again, that's because the experts say do it that way. I've thought about it and thought about it and thought about it and lost sleep over it at night. I can't figure out why it makes any difference if you're pulling up the hill or pulling down the hill. But you know, if you try pulling up the hill and you find a problem, leave me a comment so I can at least solve that mystery. But otherwise, I'm going to do what the experts say, and that's start high, pull down low. So what I'm going to do now, though, is I'm going to go ahead and take and wrap these wires around my post. You can see I got a whole lot extra there. I'm going to cut that off because that's just going to make it harder to wrap. So I'm going to wrap these around my post. And you want to make sure you get it nice and tight on your post, because any slack you get in here is going to feed into your fence, and over time it's going to be a problem. This is just one of those steps where it makes it's the little details that get you a really nice job when you're done. It looks like it was professionally done, and people look at it and they're going to say, wow, who did you hire to do your fence? They did a really good job, versus the guy that just pulls his wire here and staples it and calls it good, and they look at it and they say, oh, I see you did your fence by yourself, and they leave it at that. You know, they don't want to be too rude about it, but you know, it's the little details that make all the difference between a professional looking job and something that's just half-assed do-it-yourself done. So wrap your wires, don't just pull them and staple them in. Don't be lazy about it, you know. The little bit of extra work you do now, it's going to pay off in the end, because you're going to be able to go that much longer without a problem in your fence, and it's going to look that much nicer when you're done. Trust me, the little tiny details, they add up, and everything will be nice when you're done, and it'll last for you. You won't be dealing with wires pulling out of the staples and everything else. It seems like that staple's in there really good and holding that wire. I can't pull it by hand, but over time, you've got, this is one type of metal, and this is a different type of metal. You know, they're both steel, but they're going to expand and contract with heat and cold at different rates, because they're two different compositions of metal. This is probably a high tensile that they use for these staples, and this is not. So they're going to expand and contract with heat and cold at different rates. It might be microscopic, but it's enough to where this is going to expand and contract and come loose. And then your wood will definitely expand and contract with heat. It's going to shrink over time with age. And with all these things working against each other and getting bigger, getting smaller, it's going to come loose. It's not going to hold. So that's why you want to wrap your wires. So what I'm going to do at this point, you can see how I pull them all and got them tight. I use this wire as kind of a gauge looking at it. I'm trying to keep this spacing from my post, that distance there, the same all the way up. I didn't get it perfect, but it's okay. I mean, I might be 1/8 of an inch off here or there, but it's good enough. It's gonna look better, and it's gonna make it easier when you go to pull it to get everything nice and straight. So down here, I'm a little bit off the ground. I started out putting the fence all the way to the ground because I was worried the dogs were gonna dig under it. That hasn't really been a problem. So I'm gonna leave it a little bit off the ground. You'll probably wanna leave yours a little bit off the ground. Then when you come through here with your string trimmer after the grass grows up around here, you can just run a straight line underneath with your string trimmer and your string going underneath the fence, rather than trying to fight every one of these vertical wires and breaking your string off. So you leave yourself a little bit of a gap. It's not that big of a deal. Another thing, okay, I've wrapped my wire with the wire wrapping tool. And this tool works pretty good, but I don't know if I can do this with one hand, but anyhow, yeah, you can get it almost to where your wire is almost all the way wrapped, but the tool won't get the last little bit. That's where these pliers come in, and you can just grab it with your pliers and go ahead and twist it on and around your fence. I'll show you here after I do that. I can't do it one hand. Okay, so there you can see I took the channel locks and just it's real easy to do. I just pinch this little bit of wire. If you really wanted to, you could leave that extra sticking up. I don't like to, because when I'm walking along this fence with my string trimmer, if there's a little piece of wire sticking out of there, I'm going to snag my shirt or snag my arm on it. So I like to fold them up to where they're nice and tight and there's nothing sticking out that's going to catch on me when I'm walking by. So I'll go ahead and I'm going to wrap this the rest of the way down. You'll see here I got my horizontal in a bad spot, but I was kind of limited to where I could put it on that end. This ideally probably should have been a little bit higher or a little bit lower, so that I'm between the strands of the wire rather than right in the middle of it. I've seen a video where they show the guy drilling a hole through the horizontal to stick this wire through it and wrap it. I don't see where that's all necessary. I'm just going to either go over or go under. I'll probably go over. I'll go over and come down here and wrap. It's really hard to wrap when you're up against this post. And so this is like the perfect situation of where I screwed myself with this horizontal, because it's right directly in line with where I need to wrap my wire. And the other thing I just noticed, and I'm not going to pull these staples out for this little short section, it doesn't really matter, but the other thing I noticed is I put this upside down from how I want to do it, so pay attention to that too. These shorter gaps between the wires are technically supposed to be at the bottom, and the wider gaps towards the top. That's how they intend you to put this fence up. I like putting it the other way so that I've got the larger gaps at the bottom. I just need to keep my dogs in, and I want the rabbits and the squirrels and everything to be able to run through the bottom of the fence and get away from the dogs when they get to chasing them. So I've been installing this with the bigger gaps at the bottom. Again, it's just a little short run. I've already got it stapled. I don't want to pull all those staples just to flip this fence over. Plus, I've got it rolled up in the wrong direction for doing that. So I'm going to run with this little section. The rest of my fence, though, I just want to point out that I do have the larger gaps at the bottom, which is technically upside down from how you're supposed to do it. This is the right way, but the wrong way for what I want to do. But anyhow, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to finish wrapping these wires down this post, and I'll come back and show you that completed. Okay, I got it wrapped all the way down. In my $49.95 paid video, you're enjoying my free content, but in my paid video I show you the trick to getting the bottom wire wrapped when you only have 2 inches of spacing and just about 1 inch on the ground, and then your diagonal wire also in the way. So again, $49.95. You can buy my paid video on how to do this. It's got all those little tricks and details in it. So you've seen when I started out, I put these staples on the face of the fencing here. Another thing, I wrap the wire around, pull it tight, and you can put a staple on this side. You see as I go down there, that just helps hold this wire tight against the post when you're wrapping it. I guess it does a little bit at helping things come undone, but that's really the only reason I put that staple there. Again, I have the staple gun. If I had to do this with a hammer by hand, I would probably skip that step, but it does make it a little easier to keep your wire tight against the post while you're wrapping it. Okay, got my fence all rolled out down this hill. It's not fun, but you know, it's doable. I did it. You see my extra, I left myself plenty of extra, so I don't have to worry about coming up short here. But I'm gonna go ahead and, well, I'm gonna walk up that hill and show you one other thing why you need the fence stretcher. There's no way you'll pull this tight by hand. So let's go up there and take a quick look at that before I get started at this. Okay, you'll notice up here I'm kind of tight at the top. You might think you could pull that out by hand. You're not going to, but look at the bottom. So my top's tight against the post all the way down. And look at all that extra I have in the bottom. You're not gonna pull that out by hand, but you know, try to get it as straight as you can. But the fence stretcher is gonna take care of that problem. You're gonna see here, we're gonna get that set up and we're gonna start stretching. I have my come along set up. I've got my little board that allows my fence stretcher to slide on this board rather than just try to dig into the ground, which it will do. When I was researching how to do this, I noticed on Red Brand's website, what they show you doing is you set your H brace, and then they're putting an extra post for no real reason out beyond all of this, and they're using that extra temporary post that they fully seat into the ground to attach their come along to. Okay, I could do that because I happen to have, where I'm doing a direction change, I have a second H brace here. You notice I'm not attaching my come along to it. You're not gaining anything. For the life of me, why you would want to put in an extra post and then have to take it back out, that's beyond anything I can comprehend, or why somebody thought that would be a good idea. And that's what the manufacturer is showing. Nobody else does it that way. None of the other manufacturers. If you really want to do that way, there's an option for you. I just go to my H brace. This is the same. This is the end of this fence run. This is where that loose fence down there, when I'm done here, is going to be wrapped around. You can see I attach my come along to there, and I wrap around this post. My actual fence is going to be down here, so this isn't even going to be in my way anyhow. I've got room on the top of my post to that I left intentionally so that I can run an electric fence wire across the top to keep the dogs from jumping over. But so this one I can put above the fence. If the fence is down here, it's not going to be in my way at all. This bottom one gets a little tricky because I've got two diagonal wires wrapping around down here, one going each way, one for that one and one for that one. So that gets in your way already. And then when you have your come along hook hooked over this cable, like you see I did there, what happens is that come along hook is right in your way when you go to wrap that bottom wire. I mean, it couldn't be more in your way. It makes it a really less than pleasant experience for you. So I can't, at the top, I'm able to put my come along where I attach up above the fence. At the bottom, you're already at the ground. You can't go any lower with it unless I was to dig out my fence post, and I'm not going to do that. Just attach the come along to it. So what I like to do is I use one of these cable snatchers. And I'll just hook onto the cable, and then I can hook my hook to that and wrap around my post. Now, if you look for one of these, it's called a cable snatcher. That's what we've always called it. I don't know what the model number is or the part number or any of that information, but if you search cable snatcher on Amazon. You'll find them. It's not very much money. It's kind of handy to have. I've used it. We bought this mainly for running the kids zip line so that I could pull their zip line nice and tight, and it worked out great for that. But I'm using it for this also because what that does is it gets this big bulky hook out of my way for when I go to wrap my wire. And then you just want to be careful that when you wrap your bottom wire, you don't accidentally wrap your come along cable, because that's still going to be here holding tension when you go to put the bottom of this fence on here. So just be very mindful, because I did it. Don't accidentally wrap your fence wire around this cable for the come along. It's a little confusing here because I have multiple cables you see in the view. One's my diagonal wire. This is my diagonal wire right here. This is for my come along, and then I come around the post and hook onto the cable snatcher, and the cable snatcher is gripped onto the cable of the come along, the other side. This wire here is my diagonal, so just ignore that one. But I'm gonna go ahead and get these cranked at least a little tight. I'm not gonna do them all the way tight yet, and I'll show you why once I get that done. But I'm gonna go ahead and get some tension on these for now. Absolutely no way I can crank these. Why? I'm holding the camera once I get a decent amount of tension on them. So, but you get the idea. So let me get a little bit of tension on these, and then we'll come back to this. Okay, got a little bit of tension cranked on there. I mean, it's a little stiff. It's holding itself up. I'm not cranked all the way down yet. You can see how far down on my slider board I slid. What you're gonna do at this point though, once you get it to where there's a little bit of tension you can feel on it, you're gonna walk the fence. And what we're looking for, we wanna make sure there's no place like a tree root or anything where I'm hung in the ground. And I wanna make sure I'm not hung up anywhere on these little nubs on the T-posts. So I just wanna make sure I'm not catching anything anywhere. I'm gonna walk the whole length of it. And I'm gonna give it a shake, you know, just to help get the tension even on the wire. You can see I'm bulging out here. That's okay. We don't have to worry about that. It looks like I might be pinching into the ground down here, but no, I'm good. I'm not hung up on any of these trees. I'm not hung up on any of my nubs. And just give it a good look. Make sure you're not pulling against something other than your other post. So here's something to watch out for. Like I might be hung up there, so I'll pull it out. Make sure I'm not biting into that. I'm gonna get these sticks out of my way. I don't want them between the fence and the post. Now when we get up here, this looks like a god-awful mess. What's going on here is straight here, a little straight here, and then I shoot down really steep down there. Okay, this is one of those unique situations when you're dealing with steep terrain. It's going to be a problem. I don't know if the video is doing us any justice, but you'll see my top wire is pulled tight. It feels really tight up here at this end, and my bottom wire is still obviously loose. You can see I can move that all over the place. So I've got a lot more tension in my top wire than I do in my bottom wire, and that's because my top wire is shooting a straight line down, and my bottom wire is trying to go over all these humps. This is where these pieces of 2x4 I cut are going to come into play. You'll see. So don't worry too much about that. I mean, right now I couldn't, even without full tension, I can't pull that up to where it needs to be. It needs to be all the way up to this line. So the 2x4s will take care of that. You'll see. So what I need to work on right now that I'm sure I'm not hung up on anything, is I need to start pulling a lot more on my bottom come along to try to get some of this slack out of the bottom. My top feels pretty good, but I'm gonna have to get some of that slack out of the bottom. And I'm gonna watch on my posts, and you see my gap here, how my vertical fence lines wires are staying perpendicular to this post, which is perfectly plumb. So I'm gonna keep an eye on these. These wires will shift around a little bit, so they're not an absolute for lining things up, but they give you a good idea. So I'm gonna go down, and at my post just before where I'm pulling, I'm gonna keep an eye on these wires and get them to where they're in line. If I'm pulling too far on my top wire and not enough on my bottom, then it'll show. You'll see these vertical wires will be going at an angle like this to the post. So we're gonna go down there, I'm gonna crank it out, I'm gonna work on getting this extra slop out of the bottom. And like I said, I'm gonna do that, but I'm gonna have to put more tension on my bottom come along. This is why you wanna use 2 come alongs also, because when you got one wire tight and one wire loose, and you only have one come along, you got no way to take that up. So I can go down there and I can crank on that bottom come along, and it'll pull that bottom of that fence stretcher. The top will kind of stay where it's at. It'll pull the bottom of that fence stretcher the way I need this to go to put more tension on that bottom cable or that bottom wire. So again, that's why you want two come alongs. You don't want to use one. And I have a winch on my truck. I could hook my truck winch. You know, I could park up there in the driveway and run some pulleys and everything down here and hook my truck winch and pull that fence stretcher with my truck winch. You do not want to do that. You don't want to pull it with a tractor or an ATV or anything like that. You want to use the come alongs. Do it right. It's a lot of time, a lot of hard work to put this fence up, and it's a lot of money. You know, I got 2 miles of fence here. It wasn't cheap. You know, it might be cheap when you're looking at the price of one roll and one post, but when you start adding them all up together to get around a 2 mile span, every little dime you can save on just an individual post is going to add up. But you don't want to pull it with a truck winch or a Jeep winch or anything like that, because what you'll do then is you'll end up getting this wire too tight. Too much of a risk of pulling it too tight. And if you pull this is not high tensile. High tensile wire, you can pull that stuff as tight as you want to get it, and it's fine. But this stuff that's not high tensile wire, you do not want to overstretch it. You're safer going a little bit loose than risking going too tight with it, because if you stretch it too tight, it literally does stretch, and then over time, in a short amount of time, the whole fence will start sagging and drooping everywhere. It just looks terrible. So you got to be really careful. You do not want to overstretch this fence. You know, you're going to get it to where it's tight enough that it looks good and is effective, but do not overstretch it. You'll ruin your fence. So I'm going to go ahead and, like I said, we're going to go ahead. It feels tight on that bottom wire down on this end, but you've seen all that slop I have up at the top. But I'm going to work on getting that slop out of here. And I might just end up pulling this as tight as I can get it, and then taking everything back off and redoing it and re-pulling. Because one thing's for sure, if you see a problem like I had up there, don't just keep trying to work around it. It seems like it's time consuming to knock all those wedges out and take the come-alongs back off and reposition the fence stretcher and then hook everything back up and start pulling all over again. It seems like it's time consuming, but you're gonna get better results. Just don't be lazy about it. That's the key to everything. Don't be lazy about it. You know, maybe it's hard to do in the moment, but you're just gonna have to suck it up and deal with it. I'm gonna go ahead and crank more on that bottom come along and see how much of that I can get out of there. And worst case scenario, I might have to take everything apart and try to pull that bottom wire down a little more. But it's a good example of what you might run into. especially when you're dealing with a steep terrain. I never had that problem when I'm pulling maybe a little bit of a hill or flat ground. Didn't have that problem, but this is, like I said, a unique situation, which is kind of the whole point behind me taking the time to make this video. So we'll go ahead and get that, see what I can do with getting some of that tension down onto this bottom. I might end up loosening the top a little bit so I can pull a little tighter on the bottom. I'll see when I get there, but I can't do that while I'm holding the phone. Okay, so here is what I'm watching for. Like I said, we know that bottom wire is a whole lot looser than the top wire. Now, if you look at this post here is perfectly plumb. Now, let's look at this post, and you see where my vertical wire is? I got about a 1 inch and a half gap when I'm looking at it from this angle between my post and where that vertical wire is. Now watch what happens as we go down. See how that gap is opening up? And we get down here, and I am past the other vertical wire. Look at that again. I am past the other vertical wire. So that tells you right there that you got more tension on your top than you have on your bottom. So I've cranked that one in a little bit more. This is going to be an up and down thing for me at this point. But what I'm shooting for, once I get most of that slack up out of the top up there, what I'm shooting for is I want this distance right here to be the same all the way down. So the way you achieve that is with the second come along on the bottom by cranking that one tighter. As I crank that bottom one tighter, it's going to pull this in and get that straightened up quite a bit for me. I'm on a really steep hill. I might not be able to get it perfect, but I'm going to get it as good as I can. So I'm going to keep walking up and down this hill, making sure I'm not hung on anything on the ground, shaking that extra slack out of the top, and working this bottom come along. This isn't something where you just put it on and you give it a couple quick cranks on the come along and you're done. At least not for me. If you want to get it right, it's going to take a little bit of time. You're going to have to slowly work it between the two come alongs, depending on which way you want that vertical wire to move for you. So I can see I've got to move that come along a good 4 inches before I am even close to where I want to be, and having all my vertical wires perfectly in line with my plumb posts. So I'm going to work on that and we'll see where I end up. Okay, I'm back up here at the top, and I can see, remember I got about a 4 inch distance that I need to get that bottom cable pulled tighter. But this cable is already at least finally starting to get tight. That bottom cable is dragging on the ground. So I'm getting closer. We might be able to accomplish this still. I'm going to keep working on it. Okay, here I am. I'm pulled pretty tight on that bottom one. My bottom wire is now very tight. There's something else to look at. I've got a ton of tension pulled on this post right now. Notice at the bottom of my post, I'm just barely breaking the ground. If you see a big old gap right here when you start pulling tension on your fence, you will know right away you didn't set your fence post in good enough. So that 10 extra minutes of time you could have took doing it right is really going to pay off, because if the fence post is moving now while you're putting tension on this thing, you're going to have a life of that fence post always moving around on you. There's no real fix for that problem. Just do it right from the start. Take the extra time, do it right from the start. That's the way to do it if you want to have good results and you don't want to be chasing problems for the rest of the life of your fence. And you know, this is going to be a gate post. I got this fence temporarily up here to keep the dogs from going through, but this is going to be, stay over there. This is going to be a gate post. So I'm going to have a gate running between these two posts. I'll show you my last video I do will be gate installs and latch installs, but so this is going to be a gate post, so that's going to put even more tension and unusual tension on it, because when the gate's closed, it's going to be wanting to pull the post one way. When the gate's all the way open, it's going to want to be pulling the post another way. So keep an eye out for that. And if, like I said, if you look at other videos, you'll see people are getting big gaps down here when they start tensioning their posts. And that's a sure sign that you either didn't put your posts in deep enough, or you didn't pack your dirt good enough around the post. But like I said, this is a gate post, so it's holding tension on my fence wire, and it's going to hold a gate, so it's a critical post. That, you know, this one not that big of a deal. That one's not moving either. So that tells me my H-brace is 100% effective in doing its job, because I do have more than full tension on this fence right now. Or it's going to relax a little bit when I take up the slack at the end and tie the other end off. It's going to relax a little bit, but I'm thinking I'm pretty good. We're going to go down here one more time, make sure I'm not hung on anything. I'll go ahead and pause the video as I walk down there. Okay, here's another angle of what I'm watching out for as I do this. Remember, we set these wires up as good of a perfect spacing here as we could. What you'll notice when we come down here, well, that wire's just bent. That's a little deceptive, but my spacing here has stayed the same. If you notice your spacing changing anywhere here between your fence stretcher and that horizontal and that vertical wire, that's a sure sign that you don't have your wedges in tight enough, and the wire is actually slipping behind your wedges. I'm looking pretty good there. That's one of the things to keep an eye out for when you're pulling your fence tight. And now here's the other. This is what I'm shooting for. I want this vertical wire to be perfectly in line with this post. And you can see I'm off a little bit. I'm off about an inch. So I'm gonna work that a little more and see if I can get that inch. If you do notice your wire has slipped on your stretcher, stop what you're doing, take everything off, get all your tension off your come along, take everything back apart, and reset your fence stretcher. Don't try to just work around it. You're gonna have problems. So do it right, take the time to do it right, and you'll be done with it, and then you'll never have to mess with it again, and it'll look good forever. But I don't know, I don't think I'm gonna be able to get this as perfect as I want it. You know, obviously if we were on horizontal ground, there'd be no problem getting this thing perfect. But we're dealing with a unique situation here. I might not be able to get it much better than this, but I'm gonna call it good enough. You know, with one more try, and then we'll see where I'm at. Okay, I'm gonna call that good for what I'm working with here. That's not too bad. And if you're a real perfectionist, you can work on getting it a little straighter. But I'm pretty good. I'm maybe a half an inch off, an inch at the most. It's good enough for what I'm working with here. So let's get on to the next step. If I can get down this hill without falling. Okay, I left myself way extra fence here. I need to zoom out. Okay. I got myself I've got plenty of extra wire here. I'm gonna wrap on that post, and I got extra wire for days. But better too much than too little. Trust me on that. You always gonna be better with too much, because you can cut some off. My fence is all kinkered up down there. I'll straighten that out. And we're still under full tension on the come-alongs. So I'm gonna straighten that mess out. I'm gonna get this wire cut, and I'm gonna cut these extra verticals off here, get that out of the way, get my wire bare on the engine ready to wrap. And then I'll probably start wrapping this, because I can't wrap and videotape anyhow. So I'll probably start wrapping this, and then I'll cut back in on this video once I get that started. All my ends stripped off of this. I'll probably, I don't know if I might just leave that. You can see who's gonna see it, nobody. So I'll probably just leave that rather than strip this other one. But I'm gonna go ahead and try to pull the bottom of that wire tight. I'm gonna get this one wrapped, and then a couple staples in it wrapped, and take the tension off my come along. We'll come back. I'll go ahead and do that because it's the same process as you've seen me do up the hill. I'll go ahead and do that, and then I'll show you how to get the come along and the fence stretcher off of here once you're all done.